Next question is related with a very important current affair, what is called by what is PCA framework, or called as Prompt Corrective Action Framework of RBI. So the PCA framework of RBI is in news throughout the 2017, and it is one of the most important money and banking current affair. Now here the question is asking that which of the following public sector bank come under the PCA framework of RBI. Again, before trying to solve this question, we will have an idea what is this PCA framework is all about. Okay, so to ensure that the commercial banks of India, or the banks of India, does not fail, does not bust, RBI has put in place some trigger points. So we'll discuss what are those trigger points. For what? To assess, to monitor, to control, and to take corrective actions. So by using certain, to prevent bank from any failure, like what it has happened in the US during subprime crisis, RBI have some mechanism to assess, to monitor, to control, as well as to take corrective actions when banks, especially to those banks which are weak and troubled. So to identify banks, those banks which are weak and troubled, RBI have set certain trigger points. So anyone who any bank who breach these trigger points, RBI will give them some corrective actions in the form of prompt corrective action. Okay, so prompt corrective action is a mechanism. It's a mechanism that will be forced by the RBI upon banks when it shows signs of stress on the standard stress parameters. So if any bank shows any sign of stress on standard stress parameters, what are those parameters, which is very important? RBI will ask the banks to make certain corrective steps. So that mechanism to correct the bank when it shows a sign of stress is to prevent the bank from any failure or going bust, is what is called as prompt corrective action. Now, so there are four key indicators of four key factors which will be considered by RBI to trigger these corrective actions. So first important factor which RBI will look into is the bank's capital adequacy ratio, also called by the name capital to risk weighted asset ratio. So please revise that concept of what is this capital adequacy ratio. So capital adequacy ratio is, for every bank, it is normally set by the Bank for International Settlement, which is located in Basel, Switzerland. So under the Basel III norm, which we are presently being implemented, so it have to be completed by this financial year, 31st March 2019. So under the Basel III norm, every bank should have a capital adequacy ratio of 8%. But RBI have set a higher standard for all the banks, that is 9%. So Indian banks have to have a capital adequacy ratio of 9% under RBI norms. Now, if any bank falls short of, for example, if any bank falls short of in 250 basis point of RBI target is 9%. So if any bank falls short of 2.5% lower to RBI's target of 9%, then RBI will trigger. So first trigger in relation to capital adequacy ratio will happen. Okay, RBI will ask the bank to settle. So regarding capital adequacy of ratio of presently, most bank is not that much serious, but it is a serious concern. Not that much is a big issue, but a few public sector banks is now nearing to that lower capital adequacy ratio. So one indicator or one factor which one of the trigger point is, so you basically can ask, okay, which of the on what indicators RBI set this prompt corrective action. So one is that capital adequacy ratio. Second one is RBI will look into the asset quality of the bank. RBI will look into the asset quality of the bank. The asset quality of the bank can be measured. RBI is measured, or can be measured through a bank net non-performing assets. We know what is non-performing assets. That is bad loan. So by looking into the bad loans, or net non-performing assets, RBI will go for trigger point. Okay, so the first threshold limit is if any bank crosses 6%, if any bank is having 6% of net non-performing asset out of its total advances, then the first threshold limit, a bank will break that first threshold limit, and RBI will ask the bank to do some corrective action. And if it crosses 9%, then it has crossed the second threshold limit, and more stringent actions will be put by the RBI on that particular bank. So many Indian banks, particularly public sector banks, have breached this threshold limit. Even many have touched even 9% of the net non-performing assets, and many of the public sector banks have been put under the prompt corrective action list mainly because of asset quality as well as on return on asset. So asset quality is the second criteria. Third criteria is profitability, which is measured through a very important indicator, what is called as return on assets. What will be the return for the bank on its total assets? So again, in the first threshold limit, the first trigger point is if a bank is having 2 consecutive years of negative return on asset. For 2 consecutive years, if a bank is having negative return, then the first trigger will come, first threshold, it will break the first threshold limit, and the second threshold limit will happen if for 3 consecutive years, if a bank is having negative return, then it will get affected. Okay, so third indicator is return on assets. So the profitability of a bank is measured through return of asset, and return on asset is the third indicator on which this PCA action will be taken by the bank, by the RBI. Fourth key indicator is total debt level, or called by them leverage. This total debt level or leverage measures we can know the financial risk of the bank. We can know the financial risk of the bank. Okay, and regarding the total debt level or leverage, the first threshold is if the total leverage crosses 25 times the tier 1 capital. If the total leverage crosses 25 times the tier 1 capital is the core capital of the bank. Mainly tier 1 capital consists of the share capital as well as the certain reserves. And the second threshold is if the total leverage crosses 28.5 times the core capital or the tier 1 capital. So this is the fourth one. So capital adequacy ratio, net non-performing asset, return on assets, total debt or the total leverage. So these are the 4 factors or 4 key indicators on which a bank, on this basis only, the bank, as RBI will put a bank under the prompt corrective action list. Presently, 11 public sector bank, presently no private sector bank. Some students ask me whether it's only applicable to public sector bank. No, it is applicable to private sector bank and public sector bank. Only factor is that whether the bank is breaking these trigger points. Okay, so only presently 11 public sector banks have broken this point, especially the second factor and third factor, that is net non-performing asset as well as return on assets. So based on these 2 indicators, RBI have put 11 public sector bank under the prompt corrective action list. So if a bank is put under the PCA list, what will happen is there will be many restrictions on the bank. Okay, so RBI have 2 set of restrictions. One is mandatory corrections, mandatory directions will be given, and discretionary direction will be given by RBI to the bank. So if a bank crosses the first threshold, so it is first threshold is there, second threshold is there, third threshold is there. Third threshold means RBI will have very, very stringent reaction. So depending upon the increase in the threshold, stringent actions will become more stringent. Okay, so in the case of first threshold, I'll give you one example of RBI restriction is that if a bank breaches first threshold, is that what will happen is that RBI will put restrictions on dividend distribution on public sector bank. Okay, and if it goes to the second level, second threshold level, a major restriction is that regarding the compensation to, for example, branch expansion. Okay, branch expansion restriction will come. if it is in the second threshold limit. And if it goes to third limit, especially the higher level management, pay compensation, everything will come under a restriction. So many types of restriction will be imposed by the RBI on public, in that particular bank if it comes under the PCA list, and each bank will have different corrective action depending upon on which factor and which threshold they are standing now. So already recently since all 11 banks are public sector bank, the finance minister recently supported these banks that they will address, they will support them in relation to not only infusion of capital and other support. Okay, so to address this major problem of lower capital only because of net non-performing asset and lower return on assets, recently the government have announced banking recapitalization to boost the capital of the public sector bank. So you need to link all these concepts. Okay, so that's regarding, so what are the 11 banks? Which bank is missing from which major bank? So be very clear which major bank is missing from the list. Instead of remembering the 11 bank which is included under the list, list out the major banks which is missing from this list. That's why we put that question. So Allahabad Bank, United Bank of India, Corporation Bank of Bank, IDBI Bank. See, IDBI Bank is there under the list. IDB Bank is there in that list. UCO Bank, Bank of India, Central Bank of India, Indian Overseas Bank, Oriental Bank of Commerce, Dena Bank. Dena Bank, it's a very important bank to remember. Dena Bank is having a worse scenario. Okay, Dena Bank, a higher restriction have been put on Dena Bank, Bank of Maharashtra. So these 11 banks have been put under the prompt corrective list by the RBI, especially during the 2017 period. So that's the reason why you can expect either a concept related question or they will ask you, okay, which of the following public sector bank have been included under the prompt corrective action list. That's why we asked this question. Now, Punjab National Bank, even though Punjab National Bank is in news because of Nirav Modi cases, Punjab National Bank is the second largest public sector bank after State Bank of India. State Bank of India is not there in that list. Punjab National Bank is not there in the list. Okay, Punjab National Bank had a problem because of Nirav Modi. So otherwise, other 4 key indicators now maybe in future, because now Nirav Modi have created a big problem, NPA problem for the Punjab National Bank. But presently, Punjab National Bank is not there in that list. If you know that, it will be helpful for you to solve a question. You can eliminate and you can answer. Now here, if you know that Punjab National Bank is not there, you can eliminate A and C. So obviously B and D will be the remaining. So from B and D, you get to know that 2 and 3 is there. That is Dena Bank and United Bank is there. And obviously IDBI Bank, a major bank, you need to remember that is there. So your answer comes here as D, 2, 3 and 4 only. So that's all regarding prompt corrective action.